Okay, in this video what I'm going to talk about is the creation of some cause classification items in Ampla that allow the user to populate a delay event record with content, which eventually leads to the creation of a rich delay data set that allows data analysis to take place. Okay, so in the previous videos what we've done is we've set up our downtime reporting point. We've added a condition, a stopped condition to this reporting point. And now what we need to do is we need to create those cause and classification items to allow that population of this point to occur. Okay, so in order to do that, what we need to do firstly is we need to open up our lookup lists item here, and you can see that we have by default cause code folder, classification folder. So what we can do with cause codes is I'll go and add a cause code in here, and I'm going to call it blocked. Okay, and I'll add another item, call that bogged. We might add a third one, call that inspection. Okay, so what's happening, I'm creating those items and it's generating these cause code IDs that underpin these items. You can change those cause code IDs to suit yourself. What I'd suggest when you're going to create a project with anywhere from 50 to 100 cause codes, or ideally closer to 50, you might give them a number that's a little bit more simple than that may allow you to do some filtering based on these number values at a later time. So we might cover that at some stage. Okay, so I've created these three cause codes here. And what I might also do is create a last one, call that wet weather. Okay, so these cause codes here you can see are fairly generic. That's what we need. We need them to be very generic so they can be used on multiple different types of equipment. Okay, so those cause codes are now completed. Now what we'll do is we'll create some classifications, and we'll say that was unscheduled operational. So the classification, what it really is like a categorization of time loss by how it is, by which sort of, I guess, operating group is responsible within the business. So you can see that the operational department can cause issues around, feeding the plant too much, or letting something run dry, or not setting the plant up properly. They're operational type issues. They most of the time they would be unscheduled operational type issues. So then we would also have say unscheduled. Need to spell mechanical. So unscheduled mechanical, and say unscheduled electrical. And then we might also have, say, standby as another classification there, and then we'll have scheduled mount. Yes. Hopefully I've spelled that right. Okay, so you can see again they're all blue because they've got they're not saved yet. So if I save that config, you can see now it's gone black. Now what I'm going to do, just keep this real simple, I'm going to change their IDs so that they are more simplistic. So 10, 20, you see what's happening at the Ampla configuration environment saying, hey, if you change that ID, you're going to break past captured data and anywhere where it has a relationship, so in the cause classification matrix. So you'll see that occurring, which is a good warning. So you kind of only ever want to do this when you first create your project, so you don't break all the data relationships. Okay, so I can save that. So now I've got those items set up. So now the final sort of piece of the puzzle here is the linkage of these cause codes and these classifications. What I need to do is I need to link them to equipment types. So I go and add myself a new folder, and I'm going to call that equipment types. And typically when I'm creating these items in the hierarchy, I don't leave character, like any spaces and things like that. It's just, it probably doesn't have much of an impact, but it's nicer to know that you don't have any spaces there that might cause problems at any later time. So then I create my equipment types, and then within here, what I can go and create is an equipment type item. Yep. So I'm going to create something like a pump. What else will I create? A pump. Let's just say I'll create a whole plant type item, and I might create conveyor. Okay, so now I have these equipment types, right? So the idea here is that when you have a look at the hierarchy that you've created, you're now saying this operator has a delay has occurred, they need to nominate the piece of equipment that has caused that delay. So what they're going to see in the client is some representation of this equipment hierarchy, and then they need options to be able to select from in order to fill out the delay. So that's where this hierarchy would typically have underneath it other subcomponents. So what I'll do is I'll add a couple of items in here just so that we can demonstrate what we're doing. So we'll say you've got inside of the plant, there'll be a pump. I'm just going to copy that, make it easy, paste a few. Oops, sorry, my bad. Okay, so now we've got a pump, got a conveyor, and we'll say that there is a structure, so that could be like the sort of building itself or something like that. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to change the display order index again to promote this reporting point so it always sits at the top, because obviously as the configuration gets larger I need to be able to see what I'm doing. And then I'm also putting these folders in this hierarchy in here. I want these to be in a sequence or an order that an operator would understand. So within this plant, typically you're laying items into this structure here that makes sense in terms of the process flow more than anything. So you need to create a structure here that allows a person filling out a delay with a logical flow and a logical nesting of these nodes so that they can find these cause locations quickly and easily. Okay, so now what I'm doing is now that I've got these nodes inside of my hierarchy, I need to link this node here with its equipment type. So I've said that I've called it a conveyor, which makes it pretty clear. So now I have to go and say, well, it is a type of equipment that is a conveyor type. Okay, then you'll see I'm going to do the same for a pump. So what I'm doing is I'm using the equipment that I've created, and I'm going to reuse it or reference to it many times. So there'll be many pumps down in my hierarchy, but I'm going to continually refer to my equipment type of pump so that I configure the properties of that pump in one location only. Okay. So then the other thing to note is that, and I'm not going to put something on structure, and I'll do that so that I can demonstrate what happens when you don't assign anything. But plant areas, these also need to have an equipment type associated, so that's why I do have plant. And even when it comes to the enterprise, typically you're not going to allow or have, the enterprise, so you're not going to have someone filling out a delay saying we had a stoppage because something impacted the whole enterprise. Like, you may have that, but it's probably unlikely. And then at the site you probably will also have causes more around wet weather events or industrial action or something like that. So I'm going to associate my my whole site with the plant equipment type, and you'll see why in a moment. Okay, so now I've assigned these items in the hierarchy with equipment types. Now what I need to do is I need to make sure that these equipment types have some reference to these codes that I've created. Okay, so when I go back to the Ampla client, what you'll see now is I'll get this started. I'll go and get the Ampla client here. I'm going to close that and reopen that because that configuration essentially is cached in the client. So because I've just created it, the client doesn't know that configuration exists, so I need to reopen it. Okay, so now if I come back in here, you'll see that I have a delay here, and that's because I'm looking at the current hour only. If I open that filter up, you'll see that I'll have all of my delays. If I take out the period filter, you'll see these are all of the delays that have occurred. So now if I select this top delay here and open up the detail entry form, now what you'll see is that my my cause location hierarchy has now grown, and it now has these other items in there. So if I select that pump, you can still see that I still have no cause codes or no classifications available to me. So I've created the hierarchy nodes, but they still don't actually have that equipment type that is that plant pump still has no cause codes associated. So what I'll do is I'll get out of there, go back into Studio, and now what I'll do is I'll jump on my pump equipment type, and I now need to form some relationships in this relationship matrix. So if I open that matrix up, now what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, I'm going to add a relationship. I'm going to say that that pump, if it is blocked, if there's a cause for that pump being stopped and it's blocked, which classifications are applicable to a blockage? I'm going to say that it can only be blocked and it can only be due to an unscheduled operational type behavior, or it might actually be an unscheduled mechanical issue as well. So a blockage may occur because the particular pump might have some issue where it's cracked or blown a bearing or something like that, which could cause a blockage. So so I'm going to just, in this instance, regardless of that making sense or not, I'm going to select two classifications for the pump being blocked. But then if the pump is say has an inspection, I'm going to say that that might be a scheduled maintenance operation or even an unscheduled operation if I stop that particular pump due to an inspection. And then I'll add another relationship, and I'll say, look, if there's a wet weather event, and actually wet weather shouldn't occur. So if my plant stops due to a pump issue, it's not going to be say a wet weather event. A wet weather event would typically take down the whole plant. You would stop for significant rain or lightning or something like that. So some of these causes again are not applicable down at an equipment level, they're more of a plant level thing. So anyway, we've created those couple of relationships there already in this matrix. So we'll save and close that. And I'll just save that in here. Now what we can do is if we go back into the client and reopen the Ampla client. Okay, now what we should find is that in the delay, when I go to enter a delay, and I'll just clear this filter. Just need to turn my little recurse on. Sorry, I'll just set that as my home favorite, save me having to redo it each time. Now if I open that delay and I select my pump from the cause location, what we should find now is because I've associated that pump with some causes and classifications, they will become available to me here in the client. So you can now see that I'm able to pick from blocked or inspection, and you might remember if I pick inspection, I only assigned a couple of classifications to that. So that's where that matrix config then comes through to the client. I can say that that was an unscheduled inspection, and I could say this is a test comment. Okay, so I can save and close that record, and that essentially is a completed downtime record in its basic form. You can see that the record, in this instance, the delay is still open and it's still ongoing at 2 minutes, 2.97 decibel minutes. So it's still open, but we've completed that record and we've said what the cause location, the cause and the classification was. So An example of how that's then beneficial is that if I turn my Gantt chart on again, I can now say colour my entries in my Gantt chart by, say, classification, and you can see here that of the delays that have occurred and been recorded in Ampla, I now have this delay here colouring up as being unscheduled operational. So again, if you can imagine quite a large volume of delays in a Gantt chart format and colour coding by essentially the classification, this is what allows department heads to recognise their delays they're responsible for from each other. So you can see very quick config, and we now have that type of information able to be captured using the downtime reporting point in Ampla. Okay, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching.